everyone, I'm Sanjana and I have Vanshika with me today to talk about brand marketing. Hi Vanshi, thanks so much for coming.
Hi, thanks for inviting me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm so glad to do this talk with you today as well.
Yes,
All right, so Vanshika is a brand storyteller and a communications consultant. And since last year, she has worked with more than 70 plus startups and small businesses across the globe to build their brand and design their communications. And she is also named as LinkedIn's top voices for the year 2021. So Vanshika, welcome again, and we can get started, right?
yeah, absolutely. Really looking forward to this.
Right. I have so many questions written down for you, but before we start, we'll start from the basics. So, can you tell us what is a brand? Like, how do you define it from your own words?
Right. A brand, basically overarching, is the mental space that you occupy in a consumer's mind, and that's it. I mean, when we think of beverages, we think of Pepsi, we think of some juices, whatever those names are, right? That is what a brand is. A brand is just basically that small space in a consumer's mind that you occupy, and your consumer correlates that product with your product that you offer. So that's basically what it is.
All right. And like, what are the first steps towards brand building, especially for startups and small businesses, right? Like, what do they need? Like, how do they get started?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, brand identity creation is a whole thing in itself, and I do that as well. I really enjoy it, and I think that is the baseline of starting your brand. So, what are the colors of your brand? What is the font? What do you talk like? What do you sound like? What are the things you say? All of those things are super important. But the most important part is, I think, just two things out of your brand identity, your brand strategy, positioning statement, like who you are, what you do, why you're different, and what is your core benefit. The positioning statement is really the blueprint of any marketing and branding. So you need to do that well. And the second one is the messaging pillar. So I think a lot of startups mess up here because the thing is they want to be everything for everyone, right? Just because you're a SaaS company doesn't mean you have to talk about everything. And that messaging pillar, right? When you do it properly and you differentiate yourself, it really helps you carve that niche out in your target audience on the channels that you're on. So, two things. I mean, apart from the regular branding things, do your positioning statement really well and do your messaging pillars very, very well. I think if you nail those two, everything else kind of just falls into place. I mean, your color, your font, your this, your brand ladder, all of that is like still secondary. Focus on your positioning and your messaging. I think that's where a lot of people go wrong. And if you do it correctly, there's no harm, or there's no way that your consumers will not be able to identify you. Like, think of this as like the first building block to your entire brand. And yeah, spend a lot of time doing this correctly.
Yeah, that's totally right. And do you also revisit these positioning statements and messaging very often? Does that happen?
Right. So the messaging pillars can happen more often than positioning, but positioning generally, I mean, you don't really change it unless you've like introduced a new product, or say, you were into, say, some product and then you change your category.
Yeah,
That's
right.
when you really do a repositioning. But if you're a food and beverage company, right? Like take, for example, Pepsi, like their positioning is not going to change based on what new product they do, right? At the end of the day, they're still targeting the same audience, is still using the same marketing strategies. So unless you switch completely, or you like shift
Pivot.
industries or whatever, something very very large has to happen, then it makes sense. But messaging pillars, absolutely, you can change them every 3 months. Like,
Okay.
hey, we tried talking about the this iPhone phone app that will make your phone faster, but nobody cares. What else can we say to convince them? So messaging pillars you can definitely change much more regularly if you see something is not working, and you should.
Okay.
There's no point talking to your consumers in language or words that they're not listening or reading, so it's a waste of energy. So if you see
Okay.
something not working, just change it out. There's no harm.
Okay. Okay. And I think I should have asked this before we started. So, what is the difference between marketing and branding? A lot of people tend to confuse these terms,
Yes.
right? So what is the difference?
So branding is the strategic aspect before your marketing, which is tactical. Marketing tells you what you need to do to get to your customer, but branding will tell you who that customer is, how do you reach them, what do they want to listen to, how are they emotionally inclined towards your brand. Brand is where the emotion is, and marketing is where all the strategy is, right? So, for example, if you don't have a brand positioning statement which tells you why your consumer should listen to you, right? It doesn't matter what marketing you do, because if this is not done properly, it'll affect your marketing. So for example, like just yesterday I was talking to somebody and they wanted me to help them with some social media content and stuff. And I asked them, I was like, what is your positioning and what is your messaging pillars? And they were like, oh, positioning is like blah blah blah. It was like super vague, and I was like, that's not helpful at all. Like, I don't even, like, you sound like any other brand. Like, if I take out your brand from the positioning statement, I have no idea that this is your brand. So yeah, I mean, it's like it's the heart of your business, and marketing is just tactical. Like, go put this much money in like performance, do this on social media, do these many articles. Like, all of that is just tactical stuff. Like, you have to do brand before marketing.
And when it comes to building a brand, right? Like, do you have any guidelines? Like, how do you build a brand through content, especially?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, brand building is a series of activities that have to be repeated. And I think that have to be repeated part is where the people go wrong because they give up. So, I mean, you know as well, and I know, right? Like, for example, take content marketing, right? That's the tactical aspect of brand building, right? Which is getting your content in front of new people and new audiences, right? For example, so like even you know and I know, right? Like, tactically we can do that, but if we don't have a strategy behind it and a reason why we're using Reddit over Quora, it
Right.
doesn't matter, right? So I think, I mean, the first thing that people need to do when they're doing brand building is understand where their audiences are, what content works on what channel, and what kind of content are people looking for. So for example, even if you're in B2B or B2C, you can still do Instagram reels, nobody's stopping you. You want to do long format PDF on LinkedIn, nobody's stopping you. But if your metrics after 3 months are just showing you that, nothing is moving the ticker, then it's just a waste of investment. That's
Right.
what it
Right.
comes down to. So you would rather do things that require energy, do it well, and then reassess after every 3 months, is it working or not? And content is so wide, and content formats are so wide, content styles are so wide. So there's no one like hack. Like, I can't tell you like, you're in B2B, you should write pillow content. Like, that's useless. I mean, that's a useless idea from my end, right? I mean, it has to tie in with everything else that you're doing. So I think when you're doing content, I think you need to zoom out a little bit, see what is the purpose of your content, see who is reading it, see why they will read it. Understand that, like, maybe on Reddit they want quick and quirky content, but on LinkedIn they're ready to watch a video that is 3 minutes, all of those things. So it requires a marketing brain to carry out branding, and a branding brain to carry out marketing exercises. So
That's well said.
I mean, they're totally correlated, but yeah, you need to have both to run your content engine specifically very well.
Okay. Okay. And like, what are the first steps that that you need to know to write a brand story?
Yeah, I would say the first thing you need to know is who is your audience, right? A 12-year-old kid will react differently than a 30-year-old man, right? So you need to dive into data and understand how your audience is. Where do they live? What do they like? What do they not like? What do they enjoy reading? How do they enjoy reading? I mean, some places you'll see that even in B2B, B2C, they use bullet points a lot. Some people don't, and they just use paragraphs. Some people mix up content, text with imagery, so that imagery is like key takeaways, and then content is, the bulk of the matter. So there's so many different styles and stuff, right? So when writing a brand story, you really need to understand who your audience is. You need to understand what moves them, right? Because that's the only reason they'll read or indulge in your brand story. So you need to understand what moves them. And the third thing is, you need to understand context. Like, a lot of times with a lot of brands, I've realized context is missing. So even if your product is for 5-year-old kids, 5-year-old kids are not going to your website. You need to write the brand story for the parent. and a lot of people mess up over here, right? Like, so I think context is really important in terms of writing a brand story. And then I think the next thing which is like will help you in terms of doing it well is the content arches. So there are some couple of storylines that have been like studied over time. There's like the Cinderella story, there's a Harry Potter story, there's, all of these frameworks that already exist. So just Google it out. They're called story arches. I mean, they're super
Okay.
helpful. And yeah, you can basically take that and then, go with it and fly with it. A lot of times in B2B, they love to call out the enemy. Like, we know you're wasting time on email. This is how you do it best. I mean, we've all seen that, right? I think it was Monday, if I'm not wrong. I think that app, or I forgot the name, but there was this new email app from Basecamp where they were
Oh,
just like,
okay.
we know you hate email, right? Like, we know you don't like emails and your emails are packed. So let's help you with email. So that's
That's
another
great.
like great way to attack the enemy and build your product. So there are many of these story arches. You can definitely look it up. It's on Google, nothing that I created. So it'll help
Okay.
you think in terms of a framework.
Okay, okay. And talking about, building a brand and building content for the brand. So do SMBs require budgets to carry on with their brand building campaigns?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, the thing is that, and this is why a lot of founders don't invest in brand, because brand doesn't have an ROI, right? Brand, I mean, in terms of like, you can't tell me that because my color is blue, it got me 200 new customers, right?
Exactly.
That's not
Yeah.
something you can do. So, brand's ROI is very hard to calculate, but brand's ROI can be calculated in so many other ways. Like, for
Okay.
example, what's your time to close a lead, right? That is a brand KPI, right? Like, if you're, if people just are organically searching for your name on Google, that's a brand
That's
KPI.
brand. Yeah.
So I think you need a budget. You definitely need a budget, whether you call it marketing and lie to yourself or branding, it is what it is. Because if you say, for example, you do really good SEO blogs, right? SEO blogs don't have any ROI, at least in the first 6 months. You know this as well as I do, right? Like, it's not like it's going to overnight just rank on Google. So I mean, it's more of a brand activity to build trust with people. So when someone searches like, B2B marketing, maybe your YouTube channel comes up, it's all about trust building, right? And trust building is not a marketing activity. Trust building is a brand activity. So I think you definitely need a budget to create good, high quality content that your audience will read and will engage with and will come back for more. I think when you hit that mark of my audience is asking me to write my next ebook, that's when you know your brand is like really working for you. So
Okay.
yeah, you totally need a budget. It's definitely not free.
And I think that's the reason why a lot of brands they don't invest in doing podcasting and clubhouse, because these channels, these the activities that we do on these channels is not directly tied to revenue, right? So a
Yeah,
lot of brands
you
miss out
can't
on this.
calculate revenue. Yeah, but at the same time you see brands that have amazing YouTube channels, like think
Yeah.
HubSpot. Like, they
Right.
are killing it on every channel they're on. So again, you might not be getting a client because of YouTube, but because this person has been seeing your videos repeatedly, they'll be like, oh, if I need a CRM, I go to HubSpot, right? That's the direct correlation, and that is the power of brand's job is not to convert a customer tomorrow. Brand's job is to be top of mind in your audience's mind, so that when they need you, you are there for them and you show up as the first option. That's it.
All right. Yeah, and talking about social channels, how can B2B brands make the most out of LinkedIn?
Oh, LinkedIn is totally a gold mine. I mean, it is insane what kind of things you can do on LinkedIn. I mean, even if you're at a company, right, don't just think you're limited to just the company page. You have personal profiles, right? Your CEO, your co-founder, your head of marketing, your head of ops. Everybody should be posting content. And like, great example of this is either Drift or Gong. Amazing kind of content coming out from everybody in the company,
Yeah.
and that is also something that they're incentivizing, right? It's part of like Drift's onboarding process, that you get used to writing about Drift and what you do at Drift. So I think, there's a gold mine of opportunity, and it's so unmissable. Every single time Drift does a launch, LinkedIn just talks about Drift. I don't know if you've
Yeah,
noticed it, but
I've noticed that. Yeah.
everybody posts, everybody does a video, everybody does a post, and that's just organic, pure play organic marketing at its best. And the thing is, like, it's not like, oh, we have a launch tomorrow, let's start posting today. It's like, okay, we have 6 months, 9 months to a launch. How do we keep building the content for our employees from their channel so that people trust them? And when we have a launch, we all go crazy and amplify all of our messages. Like, there are so many of these beautiful examples from B2B companies. And employee advocacy done right, employer branding done right. LinkedIn is literally a gold mine. And I mean, don't just think of it as clients. I mean, think of it
Okay.
as employees as well. People these days want to work for companies that are respectable. They want to feel like they're part of something cool, right? If you get a job at Google, I guarantee you the next second you will update it on your LinkedIn, because you are like, oh my God, I got a job at Google, right? So think of your company like that. Like, you want to get high quality talent, you want high quality talent to talk about you, you want your employees to talk about you, make yourself conversation worthy. And it's not something that you can do overnight and even 3 months, I would say. Like, think of it as a
Takes
year
time.
over year strategy. Yeah, definitely it takes time. And I mean, it's literally opportunities just waiting to be knocked at. I mean, you never know where the next client of yours is sitting. There might be somebody who's evaluating two products today, but they see a post from Sanjana's LinkedIn and they're like, oh wait, I didn't even see this product, let me go check it out. And at least you put yourself in the ring of at least the options that they're considering, right? Versus not even being there. So gold mine of opportunities. I mean, B2B brands, B2C brands, they all need to really invest in LinkedIn as a strategy altogether, not just the CEO, but everybody.
And especially for B2B, like, are there any other social channels like Instagram, for example, that B2B brands can take notice of and be involved there as well?
Yeah, I mean, see, B2B brands doesn't mean that you can't be B2C as well, right? Even if you're a B2B brand and say you're the first brand that is like, let's say, creating these like super high tech phone enabled clips, right? Then it's your responsibility to educate customers, right? So on LinkedIn, you might be like, okay, this is it, this is the functionality, this is what it does, it connects to your phone like this. But on Instagram, maybe you might be doing really cool reels like, this is how we design this product, or meet this person who's a actual designer at the company, or ask us questions, or you know did you know that this is the future of the industry? So even if you're B2B or B2C, at the end of the day, you're talking to a human, right?
Humans, yeah.
And how you present yourself on every channel can be completely different. So for example, LinkedIn is primarily a B2B company. LinkedIn wasn't created for us, I think. LinkedIn wasn't created for the creator economy, but it's now B2B and B2C. Go look at LinkedIn on LinkedIn and go look at LinkedIn on Instagram. LinkedIn on LinkedIn is all about work, remote life, productivity, all of motivation, all of that stuff. LinkedIn on Instagram is like actual stories of people that are like on the platform,
Yeah, that's a
and
great spot.
photos. And yeah, it's beautiful. Go check it out. LinkedIn on LinkedIn, LinkedIn on Instagram, which is like, you can be a B2B or a B2C company, but you can still talk about different things on different channels. Like how, like on Instagram, one liner post like wouldn't do well for them. Like, so that's why they put faces, like that entire feed is just faces of people that use LinkedIn. So I think that's a great example. Like, go look at it and see what works for you and try it out. And like I say, I mean, I always believe in a 3 to 6 month runway. Like, don't, I mean, if you're going to do it for 1 month and then make a decision, you'd rather not. I mean, think of it as a 3 to 6 month at least investment and then see what happens.
That's a great timeline as well, because we at least need 6 months to know that something is working or not. But a
Yeah.
lot of people, they just try it out for 2 weeks and then they'll be like, this is not working for us. That's a
Yeah,
really bad way to look at it. Yeah. All right, and
I
like, what
agree.
do
And
you?
also,
Hmm,
also, I mean, not all of us are the LinkedIns and the Amazons, right? Like, we are a small startup in India.
yeah,
Like,
it takes
who's going
time.
to know about you? Yeah, who's going to know about you, right? It's like, it's like, I mean, would you go knock at someone's door, like who you, like your neighbor that you don't know? And it's like that, right? You have to wait for your audience to come to you, and that takes time. because initially they will ignore you, right? Because they don't know about you. If my neighbor just came and knocked at my door, I'll be like, do I even know you or not? Right? And so if I don't know them, then like most likely I'll just be like, oh, it's okay, like, I don't want to talk to you. But if I know you and I trust you, then only will I come and follow you. Like, it's super hard to get a follow, no matter what channel.
Okay.
If your content game is not strong, they're not going to follow you. Simple. Yeah.
And like, what do you think makes a strong brand in 2021?
Strong brand, I think purpose, like why do you exist? If you can't answer that question with extreme clarity, like it's like you're setting yourself up for failure.
So we're
Why
coming
do you
back to
exist?
the positioning.
Yeah, I mean, why do you exist, and why do you what is the change you're making in your consumer's life? Like,
Okay.
even if you're a phone clip, right? Like, why should your consumer buy you? What is the core differentiation? And yeah, I mean, it all goes down back to positioning. Like, if your positioning is messed up, like everything else is going to fall flat like dominoes. So yeah, I mean, make sure you understand what is your purpose. After purpose, then comes the mission, the vision, the values, all of that. And that's that, like, yeah, it all starts from the positioning, which is why, like, honestly, I have worked with so many companies at this point doing positioning, and for some it could even take 3 months to nail down a positioning. Don't be surprised if it takes you 3 months. Like, literally, I'm not kidding. I've worked on a project, a home interior brand, and it took us 3 months to nail the positioning.
Yeah,
Because
I can
like
understand.
home in and like the thing is, the biggest problem with the positioning is that if you're a SaaS company, right? For example, you're in B2B SaaS, are you targeting companies that are under 10 million revenue? Are you targeting companies under 50 million revenue? Because at the end of the day, everybody needs a product, right? Like Slack, like, I mean, I can only imagine why Slack has a freemium, right? Why do you think Slack has a freemium? Because they're like, okay, we know that under a certain amount, like, they're not going to pay us. But when it comes to like 10 million people all over the globe, then Slack is an essential that they're going to pay for, right? So same thing. I mean, is Slack used by people like me? Yeah. I mean, if I have a team, I'm a freelancer. I'm not even a company. Am I Slack's target audience? No. They know that their target audience is big enterprises that are global, that like rely on Slack. Like, every message needs to be saved and people will pay money for that. They're not targeting like small companies who are like, it's okay. Like, I think in the freemium plans, messages over like 1 month ago disappear or something like that, right? I think 60 days. And that's because we don't care about it. But for a big company, that could be something they care about. So, like, I mean, think of Slack as a great example of how they position themselves, and think of the range of customers they have, but still they serve everybody. But that's not their main market, right? So, again, goes down to positioning and purpose.
Yeah, that's great. And talking about brand marketers now, like what are the roles and responsibilities of a brand marketer? Because I think a brand marketer is someone who will own all of the mentioned things in this video, right? So what are the roles and responsibilities of a brand marketer?
I think first is definitely brand awareness. Second is education. So a lot of the times, what makes you different is not communicated well. So you need to do that well. So I think that. Third is, I think, the most, I think, ironic role of a brand marketer is repetition. I think
Okay.
within brand, you have to keep repeating your content and your messaging over and over and over. And that falls under the role of a brand marketer slash a content marketer, right? You and I both know it takes at least 4 to 7 attempts for a person to recognize you on ads. Because most of the time, by default, we'll swipe up and forget about it. So 4 to 7 times, right? And this is a sort of brand slash marketing activity. Another thing is, basically, I would say, NPS and measuring NPS, that falls under brand. It's not a marketer's job to check how the audience likes you or not.
Yeah.
Like, that surveys and all are very brand related, because if your survey says that, like, oh, we think you're overpriced, but we like what you're doing, then that's a brand call to figure out how do you serve this market better? Like, what do you do? It's a strategy brand call. So yeah, a lot of different things. I mean, some which are measurable, some that are not. That's the beauty of brand.
Okay. Okay. And like, what are some of the tools that come in handy for brand marketers?
So I mean, there are plenty of tools for everything. I mean, You have to, for example, for a brand marketer, like Trello is an amazing tool that even I use for managing my content and content marketing. Notion can be really good for writing content, saving content, getting things organized. Notion is also great for teamwork, so maybe, just managing the team if you're in a remote workplace. For a brand marketer, I would also say maybe something like I mean, Grammarly. I think that's a basic tool
That's
that
basic.
everybody needs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and as a brand person, I mean, the tools are mainly around getting work done and actioning on those things. Google Analytics, I think, is underrated for a brand marketer. Like, it's the brand marketer's role to understand why people are not going to your pricing page, for example. Like, that's not a marketing call. Like, that's the content and the messaging part, which comes under brand. So, Google
Okay.
Analytics, super underrated. Um, yeah, I mean, so many tools, endless number of tools. I mean, Photoshop, Illustrator, great to know. If you know it, very good for you. Otherwise, Canva Zindabad. But yeah, Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop, if you know it, nothing like it.
Okay. Okay. And talking about career opportunities for brand marketers, like how can a fresher get started as a brand marketer?
So honestly, I would say brand is very under taught. It's not something that you guys are usually going to be taught on, in your courses and stuff. So I would suggest reading a lot, listening to podcasts, listening to like Neil Patel talk about branding, talk about Gary Vee and learn about branding, look at Chris Do, learn about branding. There's so many different amazing people who are putting out really good branding related content. So I think just learn from them and then show that in your interview. Even if you studied engineering, it doesn't matter. You can totally be a brand marketer, because I think the best thing about brand marketing is that there is, like, I would say 20% is knowledge, 80% is doing it. Right? Even if I tell you tomorrow that as a brand marketer, you need to know how to read Google Analytics, research, watch YouTube videos, listen to podcasts, read articles. It's not rocket science. I mean, if you have the motivation to understand things, you can definitely do it well. And also within brand marketing, like, gap analysis is definitely a huge thing we keep talking about. Like, for example, like, I mean, call it spying, call it whatever, but if your competitor is doing 20 webinars a month and you're doing zero, then that's something for you to think about. So I think it's a lot of just being aware of your surroundings and being aware of what you need to do, even if you're not taught about it in your course. Because brand as a thing is usually just mixed up into marketing, and people just brush over brand, like, okay, do your color, do your font, and you're done. But there's definitely more to that, and which is why we actually have the role of a brand marketer these days. It's a very legitimate, high paying role, let me tell you that.
And are there any courses that freshers can take to learn more about branding?
Yeah, so I would say there is, I think, one at Micah. Check it out. I don't know. I've heard about it. I haven't taken it.
Okay.
But again, lot about branding is not like, branding is not so much
Can't be
theory
taught.
per se. Like, yeah, like, you need to learn the theory just so that you know you're doing the right thing. But a lot of brand calls are not generally something that a textbook will teach you. Like,
Yeah.
should you start writing one ebook a month or not? That's a brand activity. Should you do it or not? Like, no course is going to tell you. But if your audience likes to read long form content on the weekend, then do ebooks. So there are a lot of things that like classes can't answer in brand. It's like you have to take a risk and take it, and then wait for 6 months and see what happens. And over those 6 months, really do it with a genuine effort. Like, for example, like, say for example, there is TikTok, right? Although it got banned, but let's take for example, there's a B2B brand, and nobody's saying that you don't have to be on TikTok, right? You could be putting up really fun, engaging content, specifically for your target audience, and you could be on TikTok and nobody's stopping you. But that's a brand call. That's not a marketing call so much. If you notice that, like, say, HubSpot and Slack and Trello and all of these brands are on TikTok, then why are you not? So gap analysis is not something they'll teach you. You have to do it, look around you, be aware. And yeah, a lot of it is just taking a call and being like, okay, we should do this and we are going to do this for 6 months.
Okay, okay. And I
Yeah.
think, brand marketers should also know to write well. Communications is something like really important for brand marketers, right? Maybe that could be a
Yeah, I
skill
mean,
set.
communication is important, but it's not the most important part,
Okay.
because brand is more about strategy, right? Like, you can get a content writer to write your piece, you can get a content marketer to split it up and do the stuff. But brand would be like, okay, we need to do this. These are the 20 things I need for Instagram. These are the 5 things I need from you for this. And how do we post, when do we post, what format do we post in, where is our logo, like all of that is brand.
Execution.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. All right. All right, Vanshika. So I think that's it I have for you today. It was really great talking to you. I had so much fun learning about brand building, especially for startups and small brands. Thank you so much for taking your time and coming on the
Of
video
course,
today.
I'm excited. I'm really excited to see it go live, and I really
Yeah.
hope that a lot of people clear up their misconceptions between brand and brand marketing and marketing within this
Yeah, a
video.
lot of people confuse marketing and branding these days. I've seen that myself, right? So that's why, I wanted to talk to you about branding, especially so that, the misconceptions is cleared, right?
Yes,
All
I
right.
agree. I agree.
All right. So I'll give you a LinkedIn link in the description so people can connect with you later. I'll also mention the tools that you mentioned in this video in the description so people can take a note of. Uh, all right. So Vanshika, it was nice talking to you. And
Thank you.
thank you and talk to you again.
Yes, thanks. See you. Take care. Thanks for having me.
Bye bye.
Bye.